Hello everyone, this is Nick Allen with Push the Lane, and I'm joined by a guy who met his girlfriend at a family reunion, James Railman.
Well, my dad, he's really aggressive about hooking me up. So right on to the topics. That was awful. We have the OGN this past week. It was really exciting. The finals happened, and it was Najin Sword. We both picked that one correctly. It was 3-0 Najin Sword, actually.
Yeah,
so
I believe
really
I picked 3-1, and you picked 3-2, so I was more right. And boy, does that feel good.
There's only one first place, Nick, and we were both tied with our pick there.
Okay.
But they look very strong. It was an exciting thing. But the big news coming out of the Korean scene, congratulations to them, is Azubu dropping their teams and CJ Entus picking them up, which means that the CJ Entus team is kind of being dissolved. They're going to be moving in. They're going to be, changing the lineups for all these teams, figuring out who's actually playing, which it's going to be interesting. I'd like to see more of that from other teams. A lot of these other organizations, rather than having their main five and then their subs, actually have the subs be an integral part of the team and moving in when they're outperforming the starters. So that's actually really interesting. But what's actually going to be happening to these teams? Because these are all top-tier teams, and they're kind of being shuffled about. Yeah,
definitely. And Azubu, solid roster for both those teams, Frost and Blaze. CJ Entus, they said that the five players on their roster are actually going to be trying out for positions on these lineups. So we could see Insec, a jungler for CJ Entus, moving in and taking over a jungle spot.
From Cloud Templar or Helios?
I mean, probably not. I don't really think so. I mean, the only one I could see getting rotated out is possibly Woong. He is the play caller on the team, which is difficult, but he hasn't been impressing me with his play. I don't think he's been impressing a lot of people with his play, and he might have been one of the major people responsible for that huge loss to Najin Sword.
We actually talked about it last week, how we thought the key coming into the game versus Najin Sword was going to be that bot lane and how Woong performs, because the bot lane for Najin Sword is incredibly strong, and they abuse them. In those games, you saw that they actually won that matchup. And Woong, he does struggle a little bit in positioning in team fights. But that being said, he is the team captain. He's the play caller. So how do you lose your captain, Nick? I mean, I can't imagine picking him. I don't see anyone on either Azubu, Frost, or Blaze that I think is going to actually change.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that because of how long it takes to get that team coordination down. And if they, it takes a while to build up. And to bring in someone new right now, I mean, it might be the right time because they're between seasons of OGN, but really it takes so long to build that up that they might never, ever reach where they were previously.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what happens there. I know you were mentioning it was kind of interesting that Dignitas, their second team, Dignitas Academy, is actually part of the main Dignitas roster. Yeah, all five of them are subs, but you said they're actually going to be playing.
Yeah, so Odie, the owner and manager of Dignitas, said they're not an academy team. As far as I'm concerned, it's one team with 10 people on the roster. And, you can have as many as 5 subs for LCS. So really we're seeing, hopefully, the subs being a more integral part of the main roster.
Well, you know what, guys? That actually brings us up to our next topic, and we're actually doing a kind of reformat here with the show with Push the Lane. We're going to have 2 episodes a week that you can look forward to. Mondays, we're going to have our recap of the LCS over the weekend, and I'm really looking forward to that. We can go into some of the plays that teams made, some of their decisions, and then also later in the week, we're going to be having our picks for the upcoming week and go into some of those things. So starting off, our picks for this Thursday LCS North America, we actually have very similar picks. I personally think Curse is the #1 team in North America right now. Hands down.
How
silly, is a superstar.
How silly is that sound?
No,
Curse
it's ridiculous.
Is the #1 team in North America.
They really weren't very good for a long time.
I would made fun of them a lot. Yeah. Now it's getting a little bit difficult.
We always said they were the 4th best team in North America, but it was really just because there was a big drop-off and there wasn't really anyone left.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're seeing some really cool matches. TSM versus CLG, CLG versus Good Game University, TSM versus Vulcan, and then our pick of the night, Curse versus Dignitas.
I think Dignitas is the #2 team in North America right now.
Yeah, I mean, they could be really strong. The thing that Curse has going for them, and this is kind of my ideology behind all of my picks, is they had to prepare for that live qualifier, and Dignitas didn't. So they've had a lot more preparation time, and a lot of these teams have. And because of that, you can see my picks up on the screen there. We can bring them back up. CLG, I think, is going to take the CLG versus TSM game. Curse in the Curse versus Dig game. GGU is going to beat CLG because they're more prepared, and Vulcan's going to take out TSM again because they're more prepared.
The GGU versus CLG game, that is very intriguing that you say that. GGU, I've heard good things about them recently. I heard they've scrimmed some against TSM and been doing very well there. We were talking about how TSM, they've kind of been struggling recently, but we haven't really seen much of them. So in my mind, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. CLG and TSM TSM were top dogs this past season. I mean, hands down, they were the 2 best teams in North America, and you have to give them the benefit of the doubt and see what the other teams can do. I think Vulcan and GG could definitely pull up those upsets, but I still have to go with the main roster. CLG, though, I agree with you. They're struggling right now, and a lot of it is all of the pressure. The way they built their team was around Doublelift, for Doublelift to carry late game, and he's not really doing it because
it's hard time for AD carries. Yeah.
The Assassins are so much stronger. And case in point, Voyboy. And we look back at the change here. Voyboy is just such a superstar. He's one of the best in the world. And we, Hotshot moving into the top lane, it was like, all right, it works well with the team. He fits the position. It worked well for a while now, and now you see how dominant Voyboy is. And, you have to look back at that decision a while back.
Yeah, so that's going to be starting at 1 p.m. PST tomorrow, so make sure you guys check that out. Day 2 of the NALCS matches, Curse versus CLG, TSM versus Dignitas, GGU versus Curse, and Vulcan versus Dignitas. Again, that last match, Vulcan versus Dignitas, is really the one to watch. Who you liking?
Oh, well, I think we agree here. Curse is definitely a dominant team. I actually am really high on Dig, and I know you're not really. You think that because we haven't seen a lot of them, they might not have been putting in the time. I have inside sources, though. I've got the scoop, and supposedly they are just dominant right now. The NESL Premier Series, they actually were undefeated in that. They lost to Curse in the end because they forfeited the final match, but that was an even match at the time they forfeited. So I think they're very strong, and the big reason, they've always had the best team fighting of any North America team, and that is my opinion. They are just dominant with team fighting. TSM, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do, but I see Dignitas running all over them.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see TSM perform well, but I haven't heard anything about their scrimming. I haven't heard anything about how well they're playing, and that's kind of unusual. You usually hear rumors of how teams are doing in scrims, who's shaping up to be possibly the best team at the tournament, and TSM is, I mean, it's been pretty silent about them. So I honestly don't think they're going to be able to take out Dignitas.
I still can't believe you have Vulcan beating Dignitas.
I just think they're more prepared. I just don't think Dignitas. I think Dignitas got lazy. They had a lot of time off, and they went through some team roster changes as well, which is difficult for a team that's been together that long. So with that, I think Vulcan can take it.
That is our match of that night.
Yeah.
So we are looking forward to seeing that match. It's really going to be a telling game for what the level of these teams are.
Yeah.
Whether Dignitas pulls that out. But I will say, Dignitas in a team fight, they don't just wait for enemy initiation. They anticipate that initiation. They expect it to come, and then they immediately cycle their members out, so people don't die very quickly. They all last for a very long time. Their team fighting is tops. But that brings us to the EU scene.
Yeah.
So coming up next, EU is actually, I just realized we labeled it wrong, but it's, or I labeled it wrong. It's EU is Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
And the Saturday matches, we have our picks for that as well. So it starts off SK versus Fnatic, Gambit Gaming versus Evil Geniuses, which is clearly going to be a hell of a match.
Yeah.
But I think we are all agreed that Gambit
Gaming,
it goes without saying. Gambit Gaming is one of the best teams in the world and the best team in Europe. I think we both agree there.
I would agree with that, yes.
Yeah. Fnatic versus Giants and SK versus Wolves. And we actually have picked the Fnatic versus Giants game as the game to check out, because that should be a close one.
Yeah, that's
and very telling once again.
Yeah, exactly. Very telling. We're going to see Giants actually beat Fnatic at IEM Katowice. Pardon my pronunciation. And Giants looked no, not Katowice. Was it Katowice?
No, it was the ES.
Sorry,
the LCS qualifier.
The qualifier. I'm sorry.
And, they did. They beat them 1-0, but it was 1-0.
It was just the group stage, but Giants went undefeated in that tournament. And so I think that is going to carry over. Hopefully Fnatic has studied up. Hopefully they can take them on, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that not a lot of people know about the Giants or what they have in store. Oh,
I agree with that. They are kind of a mystery still, but I think Fnatic underestimated them in the LCS qualifier. They really took them by surprise. After that, they kind of regrouped a little bit, and I don't think there's any possible way that Soaz and XPK, with their talent level, that they can go down, because they are some of the best players in the world at their positions. So I think that they should have that. And if you watch the Giants game, Fnatic, they actually were very good about taking objectives. They were winning in pushing turrets and winning in Dragon, stuff like that. The reason they lost was they led up a couple of early kills to Giants just from sloppy play and potentially underestimated them, and Giants snowballed those kills. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think they're going to be ready for the challenge.
Yeah, and just to look at some of our other picks too. So SK versus Fnatic, we're both taking Fnatic. I've never been impressed with SK, even though I do pick them in a later pick, and I'll expand on that in a second.
Well, Herkbot is definitely working out a lot better than Aranai has, but it's been a long time. I mean, Aranai was such an integral part of that team, but we don't really know a lot about what they're doing.
We don't know how they're playing. Gambit Gaming versus EG. Gambit Gaming, I think, and you think think as well is going to win. But I've also heard some things about EG that one, Crepo is going to be flying in right before his match, like 2 hours before his match. You told me that,
and my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
I went, oh my god.
So there's that, but also their internet hasn't been that great at their house. I don't know. They're not all there. The team cohesion isn't there, and that's going to be a major problem. Well, against Gambit Gaming especially, but also against, they have 2 more matches to play on the second day.
Yeah, so it's going to be really exciting to see. And Wolves is interesting, though, because Wolves, if you watch them in the LCS qualifier, they didn't do anything that special. They weren't winning their, I mean, they weren't losing their lanes, but they weren't forcing a lot of early team fights or going for invasion. The reason they won their games was very sound team fight positioning. They were able to hold the front line very effectively for the tests, and the test on Caitlyn was just perfect positioning, rattling off those auto attacks, very similar to what we saw from a number of the AD carries at IPL 5. And that strong team fight positioning, I think, is going to beat SK. But at the same time, if we go to the next day, they're playing against CLG. I don't see it happening then, because CLG is the king of the late game team fights.
CLG,
you know, or evil geniuses. Old CLG, evil geniuses. You're right. And I don't think that the Wolves are going to out evil geniuses. Well, but I am scared when you told me that Crepo thing. I'm like, I'm panicking a little bit.
Yeah,
here.
so that's actually, because of that information, I don't think EG is going to win any games this weekend. The question comes down to who's more prepared, and I just don't think EG is prepared at all. But if you look at the matches for day 2, GG versus Fnatic, Wolves versus Evil Geniuses, Giants versus Gambit Gaming, SK versus EG. And again, that SK versus EG game at the end, that's the one we think you should watch, pay attention to. It'll gauge how is SK doing, how are they preparing, but also how is Evil Geniuses prepared with all this time
Gambit
off.
versus Fnatic may very well be a better game, and it just is the top tier teams. It's going to be fantastic to watch. But the SK versus Evil Geniuses one is going to be a very close match, and it's going to let us know a lot about these teams and what their preparation level is. And it's interesting. I actually have Evil Geniuses. You have SK in that.
Yeah, actually,
going back to kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, just so unprepared. I think they're unprepared, and as simple as that, really. So, and some of the other games, Giants. I just don't think anyone can compete with Gambit Gaming right now.
No, there's no question. They are dominant.
And I don't think anyone that EG can beat anybody right now. So those, if you follow those 2 guidelines, those are my picks. All right, for day 2 in EU.
So we have our top teams. We have our picks. Guys, it's going to be this weekend. Make sure you check it out. Let us know who your picks are.
Yeah,
we're going to be going over these games next week and see, who's right or who's wrong. We're actually going to keep a tally throughout the season, which I'm looking forward to. So the end of the season, I can hopefully come back and be like, hey, Nick, look at this 80% win rate for myself.
It's not even going to be anywhere close to that. We're probably both going to be horribly wrong. But that's it for today, guys. Make sure you guys add us on Twitter. I'm at NickAllenIGN. He's at BaronCast. Let us know who you think's going to win, and we'll see you on Monday.